Hello, and welcome to Steve's Mixtapes. Now, we've had all sorts of different guests on the show so far. We've had musicians, we've had authors, we've had comedians, we've had journalists, but we've also had quite a number of people that I just know from the online world of liking music, from music forums, from Facebook, from various places. And tonight I'm actually meeting somebody for the very first time today. He got in contact with me via the Friends of Sombrero Fallout Facebook page to ask to be a guest mixer, which I was delighted to say yes to. But apart from the fact that he's talking to me from North Carolina, I actually don't know a great deal about my guest this evening, but I'm sure that's something we'll rectify over the next hour or so. So welcome to Steve's Mixtapes, Doug Evans.
Good to be here. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Doug. One of the very few things I do know about you is you do have a. I'm living in the middle of Powys, in slap bang in the middle of Wales. Although I'm not Welsh myself, but I understand you have a bit of Welsh ancestry.
I do. And for you, we won't, no one will see us, but I wore my Spillers Records shirt
Okay.
today from Cardiff. I wrote it down. I will butcher the pronunciation, but I thought, oh, you're probably right there. So I have a great great grandfather who was born at Penwern Farm, Pennant Parish, just northwest of Lanreader im Mochnant. Did I get
You are
close?
kidding me,
Am I
Llanrhider.
close?
Well,
Okay.
you are with Llanrhider, and that is where my wife was born and brought up.
Well, perhaps we're related 200 years back.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you might be. Yeah, possibly. Yeah, but apart from that, the pronunciation was okay. Yeah, it's the clan. It's the double L at the beginning that
Okay. The
confuses
clan.
Welsh ears. Yeah,
But
Llanrhider.
uh, but he John C. Evans left almost, I mean, it was 175 years ago to go to Minnesota here in the United States before it was ever a state. So he was deep on the frontier of the United States
Okay.
by the mid 19th century. So there hasn't been anyone closely related for decades. And I've never been, or decades, century plus. And I've never been up there. But my wife and I, a few years ago, took the train from London. We spent a few days in Oxford, and I wanted to get into Wales. So we went to Cardiff and thoroughly enjoyed Cardiff. We spent a few
Okay. Okay.
beautiful days down there.
Well, I am, and I'm. Llanrhider is just sort of half an hour up the road from me, as I say, where my wife's from. But I'm about 3 hours north of Cardiff. Powys,
Okay.
where I live, is a big place. It takes up a quarter of the landmass of Wales, but it has 4% of the population. It's mainly hills and sheep.
Okay. Okay. And you asked about North Carolina. I've been here about 20 years now. I have moved south. I grew up in Pennsylvania, southeast Pennsylvania. So when I went to shows, it was in Philadelphia,
Okay.
perhaps Baltimore, Washington. And then I spent about 15 years in the middle of the state of Virginia. So still going into Washington or clubs in Richmond. There's a very good club in Charlottesville called Trax, where I saw shows for years. That's where in school, talking about our friend Ian and Friends of Sombrero Fallout, that's where I saw Pavement. That's where I saw Velocity Girl. That's where I saw the Ramones. That was a great little club. And now Charlotte, a few hours in from the coast, from the Atlantic coast, it's a booming city. About 1 million people at this point, I think. So
So,
it's
so
it's
North
it's
Carolina, I mean, there are some states that over here we have a picture of, like we all have a fairly clear picture of what California is like, or what Florida is like, or Texas, for
sure.
example. Um, so a lot of states are the something state, aren't they? Like Florida is the Sunshine State. What's North Carolina?
Oh, geez. I don't know. I
Okay.
will tell you what's wonderful about North Carolina is that it goes from the Atlantic to the mountains. So you can go from a town like Wilmington, where my wife was born, at the coast, be at the beach, and if you get in the car and drive 4, 5, 6 hours, you're in Asheville, which is right up in the mountains. So you get a little bit of everything in the state.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's the scale thing, I think, is the other thing that we can't quite get our heads around because as I said to you, a 3 hour drive to Cardiff, for example, I've got to drive tomorrow down to Swansea, which is about 3 hours as well. And I consider that a long drive. But
Yeah.
three hours is chicken feed if you live in the States, isn't it? I mean
It's
it's nothing.
our daughter, our oldest is 2.5 hours, and we'll wake up on a Saturday and just do that, go up and back.
Yeah.
It's that's a relatively short drive.
There's a thing I've seen a few times online where it says in America you drive 4 hours, you're still in the same state. In the UK, you drive 2 hours, the accent has changed 7 times, and bread rolls have a different name.
There you go. Yes, you can drive in the state of North Carolina. You can probably drive 8 hours and still be in the state of North Carolina
Okay. I don't
from
think
where
there's
you live.
anywhere, even the top end of Scotland. Well, top end of Scotland might take me about 8 hours, but that's about it. Okay. All right then. Well, speaking of North Carolina, your Hit the Ground Running track is
Yes.
a North Carolina band, I believe. They're from Chapel Hill, and they are called Southern Culture on the Skids. Do you want to tell us a little
They
bit
are.
about them?
I thought, yes, absolutely. That is where our daughter is, by the way. But Southern Culture on the Skids has been around for about 40 years. I've been seeing them for 30. They sing about liquor and sex and racing cars and food. There's nothing deep about Southern Culture on the Skids. They're just a wonderful club party band. That's what they are.
Yeah, when a hard, 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 hard,
from the 1994 album Ditch Digging. That was Southern Culture on the Skids with New Cooter Boogie. So your Something Old choice was an artist I didn't think I knew, but actually when I played the song, it sounded very familiar. And there's a reason it sounds very familiar because having looked it up, it is one of the most sampled songs of all time. And it's been used well over 3,000 times by
Yes.
various hip hop and dance music artists. So the artist is Lynn Collins. Tell me a little bit about Lynn Collins.
So Lynn Collins, I don't know an enormous amount about Lynn Collins, but I am historically a great big fan of both hip hop, particularly up to a certain point. I don't keep up nearly as much as I did when I was younger, but also James Brown. And Lynn Collins on this track was backed by the JBs, the early 70s James Brown backing band.
And
And
James Brown wrote this song as well, didn't he?
he did. He wrote this song. And the reason I picked this song, I've always found it amusing. At some point in the last 20 years, the my God, what's the word I want to use? I guess the history of hip hop has focused on a date, August 11th of 1973, as the creation of hip hop. DJ Kool Herc, you can look that up. There's a flyer that exists, had a back to school event in the Bronx, and people talk about that being the 50th anniversary or the anniversary of hip hop. And 2 years ago, when everyone was talking about the 50th anniversary, that's what they were pointing to. The reason I bring all that up is 3 days later, I was born. And
Okay.
so I've always found it amusing that I'm about as old as hip hop, as far as history is concerned. And there aren't any tracks that are 50 years old. I was trying to find something to fit in there. I love De La Soul. I love Jungle Brothers. And I thought, no, I'm going to pick something old that has gotten into all
Mm.
of these songs. And I thought about, there's Apache by the Incredible Bongo Band, and there's going all the way back to James Brown. If you look up Funky Drummer, that's been in thousands of songs. But I thought a lot of people probably know that, but perhaps people don't know
Yeah, well, Funky
this.
Drummer's often quoted as the most ever sampled one, isn't it?
Yes, it's up there. It is thousands and thousands. And that's a guy named, now I'm going to blank on, Clyde Stubblefield was
Yeah,
that
he
drummer.
died not that long ago, didn't he? I seem to.
Not that long ago. And I saw him once, but it was very odd. Here in the US, in National Public Radio, they have talk shows. And there was a show that he was part of for years. And he was part of the little band. So that's the only way I ever saw Clyde Stubblefield. But on this track, it's a guy named Jabo Starks who drummed with James Brown for years. So the track, the break that has been sampled 3,500 times is from this guy, Jabo Starks. And I just love the song.
Hey fellas, I'm talking to you too. Do you guys know who I'm talking to? Those of you who go out and stay out all night and have the next day. Expect us to be home when you get there. But let me tell you something, the sisters are not going for that no more. Cause we realize two things, that you aren't doing anything for us, that we can better do for ourselves. So from now on, we're gonna use what we got to get what we want. So you'd better think. There was a time when we had respect. That's the thing I never will forget. Now, baby, I got a life to live and a whole lot of love that I wanna give. Yeah. But before I give it up, I gotta think.
Think About It by Lynn Collins. As we mentioned earlier, one of the most ever sampled songs. I'll put a link to the Wikipedia page that lists a few of them, but you've got De La Soul, Janet Jackson, Madonna, NWA, Snoop Dogg, Square Pusher, Dizzy Rascal, Kanye West, and Beyonce are on there. It also mentions REM's radio song, and I went back to listen to REM's radio song. I'm not quite sure I can hear it, to be honest. I mean, it's a similar pattern, but
I actually did too. I looked this up at one point, I went back and I thought, where in the world is it? I'll keep trying, but it's buried in there somewhere.
Yeah, no, I can't really hear it. The question I always ask Doug is, given that it's actually impossible to keep up with new releases properly these days, given that 10,000 new songs come out on Spotify or whatever the figure is, how do you try to keep abreast of contemporary music, or do you even try?
I listen constantly to, I'll divide it up between, I'll call it new music and old new music. And I think in listening to previous episodes, I've understood that you're a list keeper. You keep
I think
track
that's fair
of
to
things.
say. Yeah.
Yes, you are a list keeper. And one of the things that I do is there's a website. I started there years ago that they rank albums, and it's the top 1,000 albums of every year going back into the 1940s. So over the years, I have used this as a basis to keep track of every album that I listen to. So not only will I go to places like Metacritic or Pitchfork, or there's even a magazine I still get called Under the Radar, to try to listen to new music. I will also try to catch up because I've missed so much over the years. So I'll decide on a Tuesday morning that I'm going to listen to 1978, for example. So I'll listen to new things and try to keep up as best I can. And I'll also, to me, something from 1978 might be new. So I'll do both.
Your something new choice, Doug, is by a band I'd never heard of, I've got to be honest, The Great Indoors. What can you tell me about The Great Indoors?
So I think when we first started talking about doing a mix, I mentioned, and I will tell you, this was overwhelming. Putting this mix together was overwhelming in a wonderful way. But I listened to so much music, and I wanted to build something that really flowed. And I was so overwhelmed by choice because I hadn't made a mix in probably 20 years that I thought, all right, I have to limit myself. And at first I thought, let's just do North Carolina artists. And these guys are from Wilmington. I mentioned Wilmington earlier. They're a relatively young band. But I heard this song. There's a little paper here in Charlotte, a little alternative newspaper. And I was reading it at breakfast, and they mentioned these guys. I don't know them. They were playing here in Charlotte. It said, I think it mentioned like a late 80s alternative sound on this particular track. And I listened to it and I thought, that's a great track. That's just really catchy and entertaining. And so I picked that one. There were some others I thought about, like we discussed. I'm always listening to something new, but I thought I would continue to, where I can, sprinkle in the North Carolina influence. And I thoroughly enjoy this one.
I can see what you mean about the late 80s, because late 80s appeared when I was at university, and this does have that sort of almost jangly, dreamy sort of indie tone from that time. Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. I must give the album a listen at some point. I've got a growing list of albums that I must listen to based on choices that people have made on this show. It's getting unmanageably long, as you can probably imagine. But I will add Drawing in Suburbia to it, which is the album this comes from. So this is The Great Indoors with Love is a Mirror Reflecting Every Solution. Now, Doug, your something borrowed choice. Now, something borrowed can be a sample, as we've been talking about sampling. It can be something that is just a little bit of plagiarism, perhaps, but you've gone for a pretty straightforward cover here. I know the artist, obviously, hadn't heard the cover of this song before, and I don't know the film. Are you a big fan of the film it comes from?
I do. I actually really quite like this film. And so this is Cat Power doing Bob Dylan's Stuck Inside of Mobile. If I had to pick a person that I would listen to forever, it's going to be Dylan. And I don't know if you remember a few years ago not knowing The Fall, uh, and going back and forth at Sombrero Fallout because I missed them. I decided I would listen to the entire catalog. And I think part of what fascinated me about Mark and The Fall was came from my love of Dylan. The words, the breadth of what he accomplished over 40 years. I could see as I was listening how people found Marky Smith and followed him for 40 years. There was always something interesting going on. And I knew I had to fit Dylan into the mix. I wanted to fit him somewhere. I first saw him 35 years ago. I have tickets to see him this summer. I will see him until the man drops dead on stage somewhere, years from now. But I picked this cover because I love Cat Power. The movie's great. And this was the band that backed her on The Greatest, for those who know that album. And if you've never seen the movie, that's
Just to
just
say,
terrible.
for people who don't know, because we haven't mentioned them, the movie's called I'm Not There.
I'm Not There. I'm sorry. About 20 years ago, Blanchett plays Dylan in 1966 at the peak of his touring with the band and the Judas period in the UK with people screaming at him for going electric. She's incredible. She's incredible.
I did because the film I haven't seen it as I say, but I did look it up, and it's based on is it sort of six different scenarios from different types of Dylan's career, and it's meant
It
to
is.
represent a different facet of his character,
It
right?
is. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, I was a bit intrigued by that. I may well give that a watch. So it's interesting you mentioned. Right, you say you first saw Dylan 35 years ago.
1989.
Right.
So
I
36.
have only seen
30,
Dylan once, but I can top that because I saw Dylan in 1983.
I think you mentioned that I've
I
listened
did.
along and I think you saw him when he toured in the UK
Yeah, he
in
toured Infidels. I saw him play St James's Park in Newcastle. I went with my father because my late father, because everybody else I knew, all my contemporaries, all just like pop music. Nobody liked Dylan and Zeppelin and all the things that I liked. And he wasn't prepared to let me go to a sort of 25,000 crowd gig on my own at the age of 13, I think I would have been. So he went with me, but he spent the whole gig being really, because he was a lifelong Newcastle United supporter. So he spent the whole day excited by the fact that he was standing on the hallowed turf of St James's Park. He thought that was absolutely brilliant,
there you
no
go.
matter any of the music. But yeah,
How
so
was how was Dylan as far as you were concerned?
I mean, I was quite awestruck because I had only seen one other gig up till then. It had been at Newcastle City Hall. So I'd never been in a stadium gig. I'd never seen
Okay.
anybody of that level of fame. He said about 7 words to the audience in the whole gig.
That's about right.
But he did start off with Highway 61, and it was a really rollicking version of it. And I remember the acoustic bit in the middle. He did one of my favorites. He did It Ain't Me, Babe. And I remember the whole
Okay.
crowd singing along and finding that quite moving. He did It's All Right, Ma, and a really, visceral version of that, which is quite an angry song, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So yeah, no, I did enjoy it. I don't think I have a bit of a soft spot for that album, even though it is dreadfully overproduced and it's too much Mark Knopfler,
Oh,
Infidels.
infidels.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean,
Yes.
most people sort of deride it. For personal reasons, I have a bit of a soft spot. But in terms of Stuck Inside a Mobile, I mean, is Blonde on Blonde the greatest Dylan album?
It depends on the day of the week.
I thought you
It,
would.
I if I had to pick one, it would either be that one or it would actually be Time Out of Mind from much later.
Okay, okay. And what did you think of Rough and Rowdy Ways?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I
I thought that was
thoroughly
really
enjoyed it.
good, really good. I
I
really,
enjoyed it, and I've seen so Dylan for most of the last 4 years has toured that album and has played all but one song from it at every show for the most part for the last
Hmm.
4 years. And I saw him do it. I've seen him 3 or 4 times do the album, and it's the I'll say the knock on Dylan by some is that he will record something and then he'll never ever sing it that way ever again. And to watch him change, evolve with these songs is fascinating. It's always fascinating. And some got better, some got worse, but I did really enjoy the album.
Okay. Well, let's hear your something borrowed now. So this is Cat Power with Stuck Inside a Mobile with the Memphis Blues again.
How the rag man draws circles up and down the block. I'd ask him what the matter was, but I know he don't talk. And the ladies treat him kindly and furnish him with tea. But deep inside his heart, I know he can't escape. Oh, mama, can this really be the end? To be stuck inside a mobile with the Memphis Blues again. Well, Shakespeare, he's in the alley with his pointed shoes and his bells, speaking to some French girl who says she knows me well. And I would send a message to find out if she's taught, but the post office has been stolen and the mailbox is locked. Oh, mama, can this really be the end? To be stuck inside Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. Mona tried to tell me to stay away from the train line. She said that all the railroad men just drink up your blood like wine. And he said, oh, I didn't know that. But then again, there's only one I've met. He just smoked my eyelids and punched my cigarettes. Oh, mama, can this really be the end? To be stuck inside a mobile with the Memphis Blues again. Grandpa died last week. Now he's buried in the rocks. But everybody still talks about how bad they were shot. With me, I expected it to happen. I knew he'd lost control when he built a fire on Main Street and shot it full of holes. Oh, mama, can this really be the end? To be stuck inside Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. A senator came down here, showing everyone his gun, handing out free tickets to the wedding of his son. And me, I nearly got busted. And wouldn't it be my luck to get caught without a ticket and be discovered beneath a truck? Oh, mama, can this really be the end? To be stuck inside Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. Now the preacher looked so baffled when I asked him why he dressed with 20 pounds of headlines stapled to his chest. He cursed me when I proved it to him. Then I whispered, not even you can hide You're just like me. I hope you're satisfied. Oh, mama, can this really be the end? To be stuck inside Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. Now the Rain Man gave me 2 cures. He said, jump right in. One was Texas medicine, and the other was just railroad gin. Like a fool, I mixed them and strangled up my mind. And now people just get uglier, and I have no sense of time. Oh, mama, can this really be the end? To be stuck inside Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. When Ruthie says come see her in the honky-tonk lagoon, where he can watch her waltz for free neath the Panamanian moon. And he says, oh, come on now, you must know about my debutante. And she says your debutante just knows what you need, but I know what you really want. Oh, mama, can this really be the end? To be stuck inside Mobile with the Memphis Blues again. Now the bricks lay on Grand Street where the neon madmen climb. They all fall there so perfectly, it all seems so well timed. And here I sit so patiently, waiting to find out what price you have to pay to get out of going through all these things twice. Oh, mama, can this really be the end? To be stuck inside Mobile with the Memphis Blues again.
From the soundtrack of the film I'm Not There, released in 2007, Cat Power with her Dylan cover, Stuck Inside a Mobile. The film is inspired by the life of Bob Dylan. I've not seen it, but I aim to in the near future, which is a mark of some interest because I watch about 3 films a decade as a rule. I'm not much of a not much of a film watcher. One final thing with you mentioning the fall in relation to Dylan, I may have got this. I haven't got my book to hand, and I may have got this anecdote wrong. But if I remember rightly, there is a story, and fall aficionados, I'm sure, will get in contact if I've got this wrong. That when they were recording Hex Induction Hour, I think it was when they were going to record Iceland, Mark made them all listen to a Dylan album, I don't know which one, and then said at the end, right, so what I want you to play is not like that. I'm not entirely sure that's true or not, but it's a great story. So
if I need to, your book, and people won't see this, you can see the bookshelf just over my shoulder here on Zoom. Your book's back there, happily signed. I've made it through it. And to your point, as you've always said, dip in, read part of it, put it down, go back, go forth. And I've done that as I've gone back and forth between albums over the years because I knew nothing. So I've learned so much.
Thank you very much for buying it because I know it cost a fortune to ship to the States.
All good. Happy to have it.
Right. Well, speaking of happy, we'll change that now and we'll go to your Something Blue choice. So I didn't recognize the name, but when I looked at the person up, I recognized the band that they're from because I was familiar with the New Pornographers. Don't know them well, but I have heard a few songs by them. So this is Neko Case. Is that how you say it?
This is Nico.
Nico. Okay.
Nico Case. So Nico Case. There are days where Nico Case is my favorite artist of the last 25 years, between the New Pornographers and her solo work. She's one of those ones who, you'll have people make a joke about how I'd listen to so-and-so sing the telephone book.
Yeah.
She has a voice that just hits me. I first did learn of her through New Pornographers. I think their first single, or very early single from their first album, was called, what was it, Letter from an Occupant. And I've seen them over the years with Nico, without Nico. But I started seeing her live, oh God, about 20 years ago now. And every chance I get, I'll go sit and just listen to her. Great band. Amazing voice. And I wanted to get her into the mix. For a while, I was going to end the mix with Nico in a duet that she did with Mark Lanigan about 7 or 8 years ago. But I ended up slotting this into this particular spot. And it's.
So why this particular song? The song's called South Tacoma Way. I don't know where South Tacoma is, I must confess.
The state of Washington.
Okay.
She lived for years in the general.
I was going to say that's
Seattle
right
area.
or the other side of the country from you, isn't it?
It's all the way across the country. But the connection to this, she has shared enough about her life. She published a memoir last year, but she's also talked in interviews about a friend of hers that I'm fairly certain that this song is about that friend. So in her having shared that, in a way you can just feel it. You can feel it. You feel what she's feeling with this song. So when we went for blue, you've talked about, it could have blue in the title, or it could be melancholy. And I went all in on melancholy for this particular track.
I put on that sweater you gave me. I woke up in the kitchen a few minutes later. I didn't know how I had gotten there. Did you guide me? I didn't make it to your funeral. I didn't want ritual. I just wanted to hold hands with JP and Mary Jo, but I couldn't conjure tears. We're too good for stupid angels. Blackness held its breath beside me and burned the air till it was gone, till it was gone.
From the 2000 album Furnace Room Lullaby, that was Nico Case with South Tacoma Way. Right, we're going to keep the mood gentle, shall we say, with our Take It Down choice. Now, I spoke to Rob Barbato, ex-member of The Fall, the other night, and he had a couple of jazz choices in his. We haven't had huge amounts of jazz on the programme. We have had one or two. You've gone for something by Thelonious Monk.
I have. The older I get, the more I find myself listening to jazz. And it came from very early, not very early in life. I knew through a grandparent the big bands, and I listened to some Sinatra when I was in high school. I was that odd kid who would listen to Sinatra, and we're talking the late 1980s. And then I got to college, and there was a class called the History of Jazz.
Okay.
And I signed up for it, and I took it. And it was a survey, but it was very thorough from the origins up to, at that point, the early 1990s. And I've never stopped really digging. I would argue that all these years later, that's probably the class that I got the most out of over my lifetime through my years at school. It kicked me off on a deep dive, and Monk is just one of my favorites. He's always been one of my favorites. And he only ever recorded one soundtrack. This is from that soundtrack. I don't know if as you looked at the title, you thought he was going to slot this into the blue spot at one point. I absolutely was, but I thought, nope, I'm going to slot Nico here, and I'm going to put this Monk track into the Bring It Down choice.
Okay, so this is from, as you say, a soundtrack of a French film. So many years before, many listeners will know the film Dangerous Liaisons. This is the French version, obviously called Les Liaisons Dangereuses. And now I'm not quite sure how to say the title of this song. Blues Bolivar Blues are?
That's as good as I'd do it. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's hear it now. Thelonious Monk from 1960, the take it down choice of my guest mixer this week, Doug Evans. Right, we'll move on to around the world. We've been to lots of places so far on this show. We've been to Cambodia, we've been to Brazil, lots of different places. We have been to Japan twice before, I think, by the time your episode comes out. But the last Japanese one actually we had was Rob Barbato, who I mentioned the other day, who chose, I've forgotten the gentleman's name, Hiro Yashi something, I can't remember now, but he's an ambient artist. This artist is not an ambient artist at all. You want to tell us a little bit about them?
Not at all. So, and I may mispronounce the second word. I think Bo is pretty straight. Bo Ningen is, or Ningen.
I think it's Ningen. I've never looked that up, actually, to be honest. I always presumed it was.
That's okay. And
I can tell you what it means. It means stick man in Japanese.
Really? Oh, I didn't even. I've learned something new. Good. So you've asked previous guest mixers, because I have listened. I have not listened when we're recording this. I know you've said that from time to time. The latest episode is Paul Hanley's that dropped yesterday.
Came out yesterday, yeah.
I haven't listened to that yet because I think I told you we were at a big stadium show last night. Very exciting. But
Metallica, wasn't it?
It was Metallica. That's not normally my speed, but our youngest, the 15-year-old, really wanted to see Metallica. So we went, and I tell you, my wife, I think, had the best time of all of us.
Okay. Well, I've mentioned before, but my eldest, who scarily turns 30 next year, is a huge metalhead and is a real aficionado. He knows all of the sub-genres, and he's very, very into all of that. But so you haven't listened to that except Metallica, but
so Bo Ningen are four Japanese guys who apparently met up in London when I heard the story. So they all moved from Japan separately and started recording in the UK, but they're singing in Japanese. And this does scratch an itch that I do occasionally have for just noise. That every once in a while, I just want something loud and obnoxious and noisy. And I find this delightfully loud and obnoxious and noisy. And that's why I plug this in here.
Soko from the Line the Wall album released in 2012, and that was Boningen or Ningen. I think it's Ningen, but I will look that up. Okay, Left of Centre. Now, I do know this artist. I've never quite got on with them. I've listened to them in the past. I tell you what they remind me a little bit of, Doug. When I was at university, that seems to have cropped up a lot this evening, but when I was at university, I had a friend of mine who was very, very musical, and I was sort of very much a beginner on the guitar. But after a long night in the student bar, we used to retire to one of our rooms and get the guitars out and record silly songs, basically with quite offensive lyrics or songs about other people that we knew on campus, that sort of thing. We used to tape it, and thankfully, I don't know whether he's still got his. We haven't been in touch for a long time. Thankfully, I've lost all of mine. I think some of it would be probably quite offensive. But anyway, it was fun. It was messing about, but it wasn't really for anybody else to listen to. And sometimes Bongwater, who you've chosen, feels a little bit like that it's more for their amusement than for anybody else's. Is that unfair?
No, I think that's perfectly fair. And this is not a band that I listen to regularly. I don't go back to Bongwater often. But as I've listened to the mixes and I was thinking about Left of Center, I thought, oh, that's a song that has always made me laugh. It has always just really entertained me from the first time I heard it. I had a friend hand me their first album on cassette all those years ago, because at that point in the late 80s in my part of Pennsylvania, Led Zeppelin still loomed enormously. And my first experience with Bongwater was they did it was called Dazed and Chinese. And it was a cover of a cover, but essentially Led Zeppelin, but with Chinese vocab. And to your point, it sounded like it could have been in a dorm room with a couple people with a keyboard just taking the piss, for lack of a better term. And
that's a very good British phrase you've used there.
I did that just for you.
Very good.
I don't. And what's really interesting about this song, and I say this to talk about John Peel, who I've talked about how I don't know the Fall, and I didn't really know John Peel because I grew up in Pennsylvania, the United States. But John Peel, I would go to record stores or look through cassette bins in the late 80s, early 90s, and every once in a while you would find some odd little tape that said Peel Session. Which to us was like a bootleg to me. It was, you'd buy your REM record or you buy your Sonic Youth record, and you'd have no idea what this Peel Session was. And
that's fascinating. Peel Sessions was such an institution if you grew up.
Sure. And I recognize that now, and we had no idea. I never heard them other than on these cassettes. And there would be no Peel. It wasn't him speaking in terms of it was just the songs. It was just the songs. It'd be 4 songs or 6 songs on a little cassette. But the reason I bring all that up in the context of Bongwater is apparently I looked it up at one point. Peel liked this song. If you go look at the records of when Peel played certain songs, he played this song by Bongwater probably 8
there's a Peel wiki that I've linked to on the pages on stevesmixtapes.com a few times. I'll have to look that up and put the link up.
Yeah. So Bongwater, this song just makes me happy. It's not, I'm not a huge Bongwater fan, but when you said Left of Center, I thought, oh, this is what popped into my head. And it still just makes me smile all these years later.
Look at his face. Is this an album cover? Oh, this is a weirdo.
Oh, they call it Bongwater? That's the name of the name of it?
Yeah. You like it?
Bongwater. Oh, yeah. I never heard of that. 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 I never heard of a band with that name. No. Bongwater. No, Bongwater. That's the name of the band, huh?
Yep.
The name of the band.
Name of the band.
The name of the band is Bong Water.
Get out of my fucking bus.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi. Glad you called. Guess what I'm doing right now? That's right. I'm walking along Hollywood Boulevard. All I hear are people around me asking each other, who's here? Who's here? But we know there aren't any stars out here. You know what I'd like right now? That's right. Chocolate cake with ice cream. Palm trees are swaying wildly around us. The sky grows darker and darker. People are all running out in the streets, some in terror, some in wonderment, most confused. You and I, we watch the funnel clouds hypnotically inch toward the ground and upon touchdown turn into atomic mushroom clouds and explode. A few spectators applaud. Scared shitless, we duck into the Spanish pavilion, but it's remarkably unremarkable. There's nothing much to do, so we go downstairs where, that's right, nude and lingerie-clad girls are having a pose-a-thon. Guess what I do? That's right. I feel caution of the wind, peel off my girdle, and take my place on the bed that stands in the middle of the lobby. The walls are covered in full-length mirrors. You have to admit the scene is pretty sexy. Then I think to myself, is it politically correct to even be here? I mean, look what happened to Dorothy Stratton. Then I decide, oh the hell with it, I'm horny. Just then, Jeff, a famous balding actor famous for his tattooed rebel roles and loose-fitting Italian suits, walks past, sullen and intense. He talks to us about, that's right, all the toys he buried in his backyard so no one else would play with them. He says one of his favorites is his Nick Cave doll. I feel pity for the man and hope one day he'll grow hair. Then I think, wow, they have Nick Cave dolls now? I want one.
From the 1990 album, The Power of Pussy, which kind of reinforces my viewpoint of it being slightly sort of, dorm room, as you say, humour. That was Bongwater with Nick Cave Dolls. Before we get to your wild card choice, was something else I wanted to ask you, Doug. Obviously, we came into contact via Sombrero Fallout, which I think is a wonderful podcast. It's not really a podcast in the same way that this isn't, in many ways, really a podcast. It's more like a radio show with an interview. But I love Sombrero Fallout. I look forward every other Thursday to it coming out. I'm sure you do as well. When I'm at home, I sit down with a glass of wine. I don't normally have on a school night, but I make an exception for Sombrero Fallout night. I pour myself a glass of wine and sit down. I listen and I make notes. And Ian doesn't seem to mind. So that's great, but it's great. But other than that, I don't really listen to much in the way of podcasts and stuff like that. And I don't really listen to much in the way of radio because now that we no longer have John Peel, I find there's very little radio worth listening to. Have you got any recommendations other than Sombrero Fallout for any music-related podcasts or radio shows?
No.
There's not much out there, is there?
I really don't. That's the easy answer. there are only a handful of podcasts that I listen to every episode of, and I've listened to every episode of this so far. But you're at 18 or 19. I think yesterday was 20. Ian's at a couple hundred, I think.
I think he might be a bit further than that, even actually, isn't he?
He
On
might be,
250 or something like that.
perhaps. But the only podcast that I listen to literally every episode of is a podcast by a comedian I like. It's a guy named Mark Maron, and he does interviews called
Vaguely
WTF.
heard that name. I can't think where. Mark Maron.
Yeah, and it's Maron, but he's been doing a podcast since 2009, and he just interviews people. And I have just always found it interesting. And I typically, you say you sit down with a glass of wine. For both Ian's podcast and Maron's podcast, my listening time for that is walking the dog. I will put the earbuds in and we will go for a walk, and I will concentrate on
There are a
whatever
few
it is I'm
listeners
listening
to this who do the same. In fact, I'll give a shout out to David Hughes over in Australia, who listens to this while walking his dog, normally on the beach, I think. So hello to you, David. I hope you're enjoying this show.
So no, I really don't. I spend so much time just digging that I don't have a lot. I won't say a lot of time, but not a lot of interest. I found Ian's podcast through what paper was it in? The Guardian?
The Guardian, yeah.
Yes. And that's how I found it. I somehow came across that Guardian list when he got the call out there, and just started listening. And first I worked backwards, and now I've just kept up with every episode.
I tell you how I found it. So a few years ago, I did a podcast called the Fall in Fives radio show, which was a bit like this, but without interviews. And it was really just a radio show, but with fall and fall adjacent music, I called it. So bands that Marky Smith liked, bands that had covered the fall, other post-punk things. So it all had to be some sort of vague relation to the fall. And after a while, I really was interested in branching out and doing, and I had this idea. I said, well, I love making themed mixes. Why don't I do a show where we do a series of songs on a theme? And I thought, well, I bet somebody's done that already. So I looked it up, and sure enough, Ian had been doing it for years. And that's how I got into doing it, cursing him at the time for having nicked the idea that I wanted to do. But there we go. I couldn't have done it any better than him, most certainly. Okay, so we'll move on to your wild card. Again, another artist I wasn't familiar with, and your page for this mix is not going to have a Spotify playlist, because this song is not on Spotify. There's very few songs these days that don't seem to be, but there is some stuff by this artist on there, but not this particular album. So this is Tift Merritt.
It is.
Tell me about Tift Merritt.
So Tift Merritt is the last of the North Carolina connections that I did keep. She is from that area up near Chapel Hill, Raleigh, a few hours from here. And I've mentioned listening to a lot of jazz. The other thing that I've discovered as I've gotten older, and I say this just a song or two after telling you about how much I enjoy noise sometimes, when I'm listening to new music, the female singer-songwriter tends to catch my ear far more than the new rock band or even the male singer-songwriter. That voice, just as I've gotten older, has clicked with me. And someone handed me Tift Merritt's album, Another Country. God, that's probably 15 years ago now. And that was the album before the one that this track is on. And I didn't see her with that album, Another Country, but the one that this is on, and I'm blanking, you probably have it written down right there. I saw her open for Justin Townes Earle, rest in peace, son of Steve Earle. And she was great, and she sang this song. And I think it was just before the album was released or just after. And what's very funny is I hadn't made a mixtape in years at that point. And I thought, oh God, if I were still making mixtapes, I'd have to put this song on there. Okay. just for entertainment purposes. And I've listened to her ever since. I check out her albums and I thoroughly enjoy her. Like I said, this is the last of the North Carolina
You mentioned about her opening for somebody. She's also been the opening act for Joan Baez, apparently, and Chris Christopherson. And the other
Okay.
fact I found out about it is that she sang the Star Spangled Banner at the then Senator Barack Obama's last campaign rally before becoming president.
I don't think I knew that. Good for her.
Oh, well,
I knew her politics, but I didn't know that.
thinking
So,
about the
okay.
days when you had Barack Obama as your president seems another lifetime away. But
A very long time ago.
let's not go there. Let's just say there are an awful lot of people over this side of the pond who sympathise with the sane ones amongst you. Let's put it that way. Anyway, moving swiftly on. This is Tift Merritt with a song called Mixtape.
How did you get so wise? I take the advice I find in your eyes. Me, I've been waiting outside most of my life, oh, like a rare side. I'm just making you mixtapes with homemade covers, analog to show we're lovers. And here under the jacket, folds inside, I've taped my heart for you to find the perfect way, which album to say I love you with this plastic cassette. It's not finished yet, but it's gonna tell you slowly. I'm just making you mixtapes with homemade covers, strings and drawings. Show we're lovers when you're driving around in the summertime. To hear again, just press rewind, rewind. Rewind, it comes to an end, turns over again, another 1,000 times. But me, I'll be the same. No, I never change. I'm like a red side. I'll be making you mixtapes with homemade covers, analog to show we're lovers. So much rock and roll love in a plastic case. Play it loudly, see my face. I'm just making you mixtapes with homemade covers. Magic Star, Dawn of Dance colors, just an audio love letter painted blue. I spent all day making for you, for you, for you.
Mixtape by Tift Merritt from the 2010 album See You on the Moon. So we're heading towards your finale track, Doug. I normally ask people what's the rest of 2025 got in store for you? Any big plans? Anything exciting on the horizon?
I will tell you, our oldest, my daughter, just finished her first year teaching sixth graders. So in the
Okay,
US,
so
it'd be 12-year-olds.
I was going to say, yeah, because sixth grade for you is year 7 in here. So
Yes,
that would be the first year of secondary school as we have it, but you divide it up in different ways in the States, don't you?
it is. Here it would be middle school, and
Yeah.
she just finished. This coming week, she's finishing her first year of it, and
Well,
she's ready for a break.
you can tell her from me that your second year of teaching is such a huge relief because your first year you feel you're doing everything from scratch, and then not everything, but in your second year, some things you'll think, oh, I can just do that again. I did that last year and it worked fine. I can just do that again, and that's such a relief compared to your first year. So do not that it'll mean necessarily much from a complete stranger on the other side of the planet, but tell her well done for me if you can get through your first year, because it is tough. I remember it was 1993 when I did my first year of teaching, and
Okay.
yeah, I remember how tough it was. So good luck to her in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get to your phonology jazz. A band that I do know, and I feel that I ought to have listened to more, to be honest. They were quite an influence on REM, and I'm a big fan of REM up to about New Adventures in Hi-Fi. After that, they start to lose me a little bit. But anyway, it's the Feelies. So why you've gone for Crazy Rhythms, title track of their 1980 album. Why did you feel this would be a good one to close the mix?
This one is, I'll tell a little story about this one. So there were a few different ways I was thinking about closing the mix, and I settled on this one. One, I love the song. I love the album. And for me, it is a reminder to just keep looking. And here's why. When you're a kid, you have friends who have older siblings who have music that you don't have. And this album, this cassette, I can picture the cassette, the bright blue with the four faces, being in the collection of the older sister of a friend of mine. And I didn't know this when it was released in 1980. I was 7. But probably 1985, 86, we would trade tapes, or we would raid older siblings' cassettes. And up to that point, I was listening to an enormous amount of just pop, just what was on the radio, your Duran Duran, your Men at Work, all of that stuff. I knew that stuff. And this was one of the first albums that I picked up and played and had my brain rattle a different way. And I said, oh my God, what is that? and ever since then, anytime I've heard that, I've been able to kind of go back to hearing that the first time. You can get that little bit of light and excitement to say, I remember when I first heard that, and it just made me think about something totally different. And so it's to me, as we blast off and end, it's just keep digging, keep listening, keep finding new things. I have no patience when I'm on a news group or I'm listening to someone talk about, no one's made any good music in 40 years. I always call it just bull. That's just garbage. There's always good music. You just have to, sometimes you have to dig. Sometimes it is popular, but sometimes you have to really dig.
TV show. Well, that's alright, I watch it anyway. I don't talk much cause it gets in my way. Don't let it get in the way. Crazy feeling, crazy feeling, crazy, crazy.
From the 1980 album of the same name, Crazy Rhythms by the Feelies, the finale track of my guest mixer this week, Doug Evans. Well, Doug, it only remains for me to say thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for reaching out, as the term seems to be these days, or sending me an email to ask to come on the show, because it's been great. It's been really interesting. It's been a pleasure to meet you. I hope you've enjoyed the process.
I have. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Okay. Cheers then.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.